Cook once and eat for days. We're gonna make a big batch of chili and you don't even need a giant pot to do it. I love the idea of freezer cooking, and I have tried a lot of recipes over the years for meals that you prep ahead of time, put them in the freezer, pull them out, thaw them, serve them. And I have found very few that I actually like. They often don't taste good. And if they do taste good, they're often very complicated. To me, that's defeating the purpose. I don't want to do a bunch of steps to prep a meal for the freezer and then have to do a 12-step process to then get that meal on the table. For me, a freezer meal should be something you can heat and eat. So chili is a really great recipe for that. And I'm gonna share my method and my recipe with you today for how I make a big batch of chili and get it in the freezer for those busy days. You don't need a big pot. You're gonna prepare everything in a smaller Dutch oven on the stove and cook the meat in your Instant Pot. I've already pre-cooked my meat and I have a video for that. I'll leave a link in the description if you haven't seen it. So my meat's cooked and it's in the fridge. I'm actually gonna get started now with my tomato sauce. So come over to the stove and I'll show you what goes into it. So I've heated a 1/4 cup of canola oil in here, and to that I'm gonna add 6 onions that I've diced up. I'm just gonna let that soften and cook down. So these onions are softening up really nicely. I'm just gonna add my garlic now. This is 12 cloves of garlic that I pressed with my garlic press earlier. You could use the minced stuff that you can buy in the bottle or the jar. I hear people love that stuff, but I don't have room in my fridge to store it, so I just buy regular garlic. You just want to give that garlic time to soften up and get fragrant, but don't leave it in too long that it's going to burn. Just a minute or two. Now I'm going to add my tomato sauce. You need 4 cans that are 680 milliliters. As far as I can tell, this is an odd size of can compared to what you can get in the United States. I'm in Canada, so our tomato sauce doesn't come in the 29-ounce cans. If that's what you were using, you'd want 3 of them, I believe, but don't quote me. You can do the math yourself. 680 milliliters times 4, divided by however many ounces that is. And I do like to buy tomato sauce that doesn't have salt added to it. I like to be in control of how much salt I add to my food. I also look for kind of the lowest sugar amount possible. It's silly that they would add sugar to tomato sauce. You don't need to add sugar to tomato sauce. There's enough sugar in the tomatoes already. Now you're gonna add 3/4 of a cup of chili powder. Yes, 3/4 of a cup. 2 tablespoons of salt. You can always add more salt later when you reheat these individual batches, but this is a good place to start. 2 tablespoons of oregano. 2 tablespoons of cumin. And 1.5 teaspoons of cayenne pepper. If you like it spicy, add more cayenne pepper. If you don't like any spice, you could reduce this. This is a spice level that is tolerable even for our 5- and 2-year-old. So I would say it's a good base level, but you do you. So I'm just gonna give this a stir, and then I'm gonna leave this to simmer while I measure out my meat. So I've pulled my ground beef out of the fridge. This is ground beef that I've already cooked. Like I mentioned, I've cooked this in my Instant Pot. For this recipe, you need 7.5 pounds of cooked meat. And so I'm going to divide that by 5 containers. Depending on the size of your family and how much you eat in a meal, you can scale that up or down. But for the size of our family, I find that dividing this recipe by 5 works well for us. And so I'm going to put 1.5 pounds of cooked meat into each of these containers. Now, I highly recommend using these round containers from the dollar store. The reason you want to use round ones for a freezer meal is because you can pop your frozen chili right out of the container into your pot. They're the same shape, so you don't need to thaw it. I'd advise thawing it, but if you're in a hurry and you didn't get supper out in time, you can just put frozen chili in the pot and reheat it that way. I've got my meat all portioned out here, and now I'm going to add the beans. If you don't like beans, you don't have to put beans in yours. Some people in my family like beans, others don't, so we compromise and put beans in the chili. It's not as much beans as some people would like, so at least the people who don't like beans can console themselves with the knowledge that it could be worse. So this is 3 cans of kidney beans that I'm dividing up evenly between my containers. I'm just gonna spread the beans around, and then we will put the tomato sauce on top. So the sauce is done simmering, and I'm just going to divide it between my containers. I don't know exactly how much I need to be putting into each one, but as long as you're using a scale, you'll know that you're getting the same amount evenly into your packages. Just set that scale to 0 again, and then because all of these hold the same volume currently, you're starting at a blank slate. Try to not make as big of a mess as I am. I almost got it exactly even on the first try, so I don't have to go back and move little bits around to get them to the same weight, so that's pretty awesome. These are still pretty warm and steamy because we did just pull that tomato sauce off of the stove not long ago. So you do want to let the sauce cool off before you put it in the freezer. When you put your lid on, make sure that you label it. I like to use painter's tape and a Sharpie, and I just write what's inside and the date that I cooked it so that I don't forget about things in the freezer. If you don't label it, you won't remember what's in it. And if you do, you're a better person than me. So label your container. Don't put the lid on when it's still steaming. You don't want to end up with ice crystals built up in there. Food doesn't taste as good when it has that on there. When you're ready to reheat it, I would recommend thawing it in the fridge a day or 2 before. But if you're in a crisis and you just need supper for today and you need to pull out a frozen block of chili, you can reheat it from frozen as well. I would recommend that you invert the frozen brick of chili into your pot so the sauce part is now on the bottom of the pan, and add a 1/4 cup of water over low heat and just keep stirring it to incorporate the sauce with the meat. You could add a little more water if you like your chili saucier, and heat it until it's simmering and you're ready to eat. So you can see that prepping chili this way, it does take more time than making a single batch of chili, but it's significantly less time than making 5 batches. And now I have meals for the freezer for those days that are hectic and I just don't feel like cooking. I still have a plan in place. Thank you so much for being here. If you found this helpful, would you please like and subscribe if you haven't already? And leave me a comment down below if you have questions about how to meal prep, how to feed a family. Maybe I can offer some more helpful advice. I'll see you next time. Bye.